Welcome back to Chess Tactic Today. In this FIDE World Cup 2025 clash, Alexander Donchenko faces the powerhouse Quang Liem, and what starts as a calm Queen's Indian setup soon turns into a tactical storm. Liem unleashes four absolutely brilliant moves in a row, fighting back with precision and creativity that'll leave you stunned. This is not just a game, it's a masterclass in defense turned counterattack. And we're off. Donchenko opens with the queen's pawn to d4, immediately staking a claim in the center. Quang Liem responds with knight to f6, a flexible and popular reply, preparing to control the key f square. White follows up with pawn to c4, creating the classic queen's gambit setup and fighting for more central space. And black plays pawn to e6. This move solidifies the center and prepares to develop the dark-squared bishop, keeping options open for several different defensive systems. Knight to c3 from Donchenko, developing a piece and putting the question to black. This invites one of the most respected openings in chess. And there it is, bishop to b4. We have a Nimzo-Indian defense on the board, one of the sharpest and most strategically rich openings. Black immediately pins the knight, creating instant tension. Donchenko chooses the Rubinstein variation with pawn to e3. This is a very solid system, preparing to develop the kingside bishop and bolster the d4 pawn. Quang Liem calmly castles kingside, getting his king to safety before the middle game storm begins. White develops with bishop to d3, a natural square where it eyes the kingside and prepares to support a central push. And black strikes back in the center with pawn to d5. This is the main line, challenging white's control and fighting for an equal share of the board. Pawn to a3 from white, immediately asking the bishop what its intentions are. This forces a decision and sets up a key strategic imbalance. Quang Liem decides to resolve the tension. Bishop takes knight on c3 check. He gives up his bishop pair, but in return he saddles white with doubled pawns. And of course, b-pawn takes c3. This is the trade-off. White now has the famous bishop pair, which can be incredibly strong in open positions, but those doubled c-pawns can also become a long-term weakness. In response, black plays d-pawn takes c4, opening up the position slightly and forcing white's bishop to move again. White recaptures bishop takes c4. Now white's light-squared bishop sits on a great diagonal, looking right into the heart of black's position. And here comes the counterstrike, pawn to c5. A classic idea for black in the Nimzo, aiming to undermine white's pawn center and create targets. An interesting choice from Donchenko, knight to e2. This keeps the f-pawn free to move and prepares to support the center. It's a bit more flexible than the more common nf3. Quang Liem develops his queen to c7, putting pressure on the c4 bishop and connecting his rooks. A very useful, multi-purpose move. Seeing the pressure, white tucks the bishop away to e2. From here, it's out of harm's way but still controls that critical long diagonal, a very patient move. Donchenko finally castles kingside, getting his king safe and connecting the rooks. The opening phase is now complete and the real battle is about to begin. A clever move from Quang Liem, bishop to a6. This move puts immediate pressure on the d-pawn and restricts white's central plans. It's a bit of a thorn in white's side. Rook to e1. White prepares for the central break with f4 and moves the rook off the f-file, anticipating future action on the kingside. This is a subtle but important prophylactic move. And black mirrors the idea, bringing his rook to date to put more pressure on the d4 pawn. Both players are fighting for control of the center files. Knight to g3. The knight that started on e2 now hops to an excellent attacking square. From g3, it eyes f5 and h5, hinting at a potential kingside assault. Black continues with calm development, bringing the knight to c6. It adds another defender to the f square and prepares to challenge white's control. A creative rook lift, rook to bone. White is getting ready to swing this rook over to the action, maybe to the kingside or to support the center. A classic sign that an attack is brewing. Rook to sate from black. Quang Liem eyes the weak c-pawns and prepares to generate counterplay on the queenside. We have a classic strategic battle, white's kingside ambitions versus black's queenside pressure. And there's the follow-up. The rook lifts to b2, a fantastic multi-purpose square. It can swing to g2 to attack the king or to d2 to defend the center. This move sets up something dangerous, watch closely. Knight to a5, a typical plan for black, targeting the weak c4 pawn. Quang Liem is trying to create distractions on the queen side before white's attack gets rolling. And there it is, pawn to f4. Donchenko says enough maneuvering and cracks open the center. This is a powerful, ambitious move that unleashes his bishops and gives his pieces more room to breathe. The real fireworks are about to begin. Black immediately takes on d4. This seems natural, but it opens the c-file for white's rook. Would you have played this or tried to keep the tension? White recaptures, pawn takes d4, and now that light-squared bishop on Atwo is a monster, staring down the long diagonal. Bishop to c4 from Quang Liem, an excellent move trading off white's dangerous bishop. He's trying to defuse the attack before it even starts. White ignores the bishop trade for now and plays bishop to g5, pinning the f6 knight and adding another piece to the kingside attack. The pressure is mounting. Black goes through with the plan, bishop takes bishop on Atwo. He gets rid of white's powerhouse bishop, but this takes a key defender away from his own king. Here is the critical moment of the game. Bishop takes knight on f6, a stunning positional sacrifice from Donchenko. He shatters the pawn structure around black's king, leaving it exposed for the world to see. This is a brave, brilliant decision that completely changes the character of the game. Forced, of course, pawn takes bishop. Quang Liem's kingside is now a wreck, but he's hoping his pieces can create enough counterplay to survive. And now we see the point of that rook lift from earlier. Rook takes Atwo. The rook that was on Beatwo just a few moves ago is now an active attacker, ready to join the fray. Quang Liem is not one to sit back and wait. Queen to c3, an aggressive move creating immediate threats against white's back rank and d-pawn. He's fighting fire with fire. A cool-headed response, rook to d2. White defends the d-pawn and prepares to swing this rook over to the kingside as well, a fantastic defensive and attacking move. King to height from black, a useful prophylactic move, getting the king off the g-file where it could be vulnerable to checks. The rook keeps coming, rook to d3, kicking the queen and preparing to join the attack on the third rank. White's coordination is just superb. The queen retreats to c7, but white's attack is now in full swing. Queen to f3 from Donchenko, every piece is joining the party. The queen now eyes the weak f6 pawn and adds more fuel to the fire. Black brings his queen back to e7 for defense, desperately trying to hold the position together. And now the knight jumps in, knight to h5. This move is relentless, putting immense pressure on f6. The coordination of white's queen, knight, and rooks is a nightmare for black. Knight to c6. Black is trying to create counter-threats against the d4 pawn, but it feels like it might be too little, too late. A simple, powerful move, rook to done. White secures the d-pawn and completes his development. All of his pieces are now perfectly placed for the final assault. In a desperate attempt to create space and complications, Quang Liem plays pawn to f5. He's trying to break up white's attack, but this also opens more lines for white's pieces. White happily accepts the challenge, pawn takes f5. Now the e-file is open for his rook. Pawn to f5, a last-ditch effort to block the position and create a defensive fortress. But Donchenko is ruthless. Pawn to f6. This pawn is a dagger pointed at the heart of black's position. It kicks the queen and prepares to create a passed pawn. The queen is forced back to fate. It's defending, but it's completely passive. Pawn to d5. Another powerful pawn push, kicking the knight and further tearing open black's defenses. Knight to d4. The knight finds an active square, blocking the d-file and attacking the queen. This is black's best chance. Queen to f4 from white, moving out of danger and keeping the pressure on. Notice how white's queen controls key squares and restricts black's pieces. Queen to d6. Black centralizes his queen, trying to hold everything together. He's now eyeing the h2 pawn. A calm, brilliant little pawn move, h3. White prevents any backrank checkmate ideas and gives his own king a bit of breathing room. It's the small moves like this that win games. Black captures the pawn on d5. It seems like he's won a pawn, but this walks right into a stunning tactical sequence. Queen to g4, a beautiful move, pinning the knight and setting up a deadly threat on the g-file. The end is near. Forced rook to j8. Black has to defend against the threat of qg7 checkmate. And here it is, the final, brilliant blow. Queen takes g7 check. Donchenko sacrifices his queen to force a completely winning endgame. What an absolutely beautiful and decisive combination. This is a tactic you'll want to save and study forever. Black has no choice, rook takes queen. Pawn takes rook, becoming a new pawn on g7 check. This pawn is now unstoppable. It's a testament to the power of a passed pawn. The king is forced to jait. It's trapped behind its own pieces. And the knight delivers the final part of the combination. Knight to f6 check. It's a royal fork attacking the king and the queen. King takes the pawn on g7. Black gets rid of the immediate threat, but now white's knight is free to capture the queen. Knight takes the queen on d5. The dust has settled and white is completely winning. He has a rook and knight for a rook, and black's position is in shambles. Rook to c5. Black tries to fight on, attacking the knight. The knight simply retreats to e3, a solid defensive square. Quang Liem activates his rook to a5, looking for any shred of counterplay. Knight to c4, a great centralizing move, challenging the rook and controlling key squares. The rook returns to c5. Black is running out of useful moves. And white cashes in. Knight takes pawn on f5. Another pawn falls, and the win is just a matter of technique from here. A final check, knight to e2. The king simply steps to phone, out of danger. Rook takes knight on f5. Black gets a piece back, but white's countertactic is decisive. Rook to e1, pinning the knight to the king. A simple but deadly skewer. The knight tries to escape to f4, but it's too late. Rook takes rook on f5, winning the exchange. Knight takes d3, but the resulting endgame is hopeless for black. Rook to s7. White's rook is now a monster, dominating the 7th rank and ready to gobble up pawns. Pawn to a6, trying to hold the queenside together. The rook swings over to b7, targeting the b-pawn. There are just too many weaknesses. Pawn to b5, a desperate attempt to create a passed pawn of his own. Rook to b6, stopping the pawn and preparing to pick off more material. Pawn to h6, black is out of ideas. Rook takes a6, another pawn is gone, and white now has his own passed pawn. The b-pawn pushes forward. But white's pawn starts running as well, and it's much faster. Pawn to b3. Rook to b6, and the pawn is blockaded. Black's final hope is extinguished. Pawn to b12. Pawn to a5. The pawn is unstoppable, and at this point, Quang Liem has seen enough. And that's the resignation. A truly phenomenal attacking game from Donchenko, crowned by that brilliant queen sacrifice. It was a story of building pressure, a daring sacrifice, and flawless execution. Thanks for watching us break it down here on Chess Tactic today.